Welcome back. On Tuesday, Jamaica's commitment to safeguarding the human rights of its citizens will be assessed by the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, IACHR, in a hearing with Jamaicans for Justice JFJ and other human rights organizations in Washington, D.C. This is the second hearing to be held this year. To give us some details on the issues arising from this development is JFJ Director Roger Malcolm, who speaks to us now from Washington in the United States, where he is to represent his organization. Welcome, Mr. Malcolm.
Hi, good evening, Maya, and good evening to your listeners.
The Commission has convened the hearing in a follow-up to the response of the Jamaican government to the findings and recommendations in the 2012 report on human rights in Jamaica. Give us a quick reminder of the major findings of this report that are likely to be up for assessment.
Yes, certainly. So in 2012, the IACHR found that there was entrenched impunity within the Jamaica Constabulary Force, alarming rate of citizens who were killed by the police, not enough accountability, no independent investigations into these killings by the police. They also identified structural failings of the justice system, serious delays and backlogs that prevent citizens from using the courts to protect their rights. Issues with the DPP in prosecuting police officers. They also found serious breaches of rights for children, children in the care of the state, children housed for illegal periods in police lockups when they were supposed to be held in care and protection. It found several breaches in terms of prison conditions that found them to be cruel and inhumane, following a UN report as well, which also found them cruel and inhumane, and gave specific measures that the government ought to have taken to bring both the police force, the child care sector, the justice system, and the prison system in alignment with basic international human rights standards for the administration of justice, children, and the detention of persons as well as prisoners. So those are the big ones. They also dealt with LGBT Jamaicans, vulnerable groups. It was a very wide-ranging report, and we hope the discussion tomorrow will be very wide-ranging as well.
All right, you spoke to some issues of corrections, the DPP, structural failings as it relates to the police, court, and justice system. Now, it's 2012, a report we're looking at issued in 2012. These issues that you outlined, these bullet points, don't sound new. And in my mind, Roger, if you're looking at the situation, 2012, the report must have spanned a period prior to that, say, of at least 5 years of assessment, yes, right? Do you feel that persons in the Jamaican sphere believe that justice takes too long to come? This is 2014. Subsequent to this 2012 report, several things have occurred that you know of in current time. It seems as if you follow proper procedure, justice is something too long in the coming.
Yes, it's definitely right. I mean, this report may have been in 2012, but the structural issues are still in place. There was a hearing into this very same report in March. She presented updated information to the IACHR about the same issues, particularly justice delay. In JFJ's work, we have over 280 active cases in the court, and it takes us around average of six years sometimes just to get a case finalized throughout the court for police killings. This is in the coroner's court. So the delay in the justice system is endemic. It still takes place. The government has recognized that. We're just sad that they're not doing enough to fix it. But moreover, a point you raised, Maya, is very important in that it creates a public perception that using the court system and using legitimate forms of justice are not feasible options, and as such, persons don't engage with the state and perhaps engage in extra legal means or don't resort to the justice system at all to resolve their conflict. And that's very dangerous, one, for human rights and dangerous for democracy. We have to have confidence from the public in the justice system and in the police force and the security forces more generally. So one, protect them, and secondly, to be independent arbiters of conflict and protectors of rights. And if that isn't taking place, then you have a very dangerous situation for our public interface with the government, something that we have outlined specific steps to the government, for example, that they ought to take, and so as IACHR, to bring themselves in alignment. And we're just very disappointed that since 2012, in 2014, those steps have not been taken, which is why the hearing is being scheduled. It is to follow up on 2 years after what has been done, as we did in March, and after a 6-month period, we had action done in March. What has taken place now in October, and has it been sufficient? Sadly, we are willing to report tomorrow it has not.
All right, before we backtrack to March, the JFJ says that, because I want to hear what happened then, the JFJ says that Jamaica will be the only CARICOM state to have a hearing into its human rights record at this session of the IHCHR. What is the significance of that for Jamaica before we look at what came out of March?
Yes, so the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights monitors all states in the entire Western Hemisphere, 35 member states of the OAS. It's unfortunate, and really it sends a signal that Jamaica, one, is the only state to have consistent cases reported IHCHR of human rights violations. It's the only state to have that hearing in March, and it's the only state from the CARICOM to have a hearing in October. And having 2 hearings in 1 year is extremely rare. So it demonstrates the Commission has recognized a serious problem, specifically in Jamaica, and is taking action to protect the rights of those who have had their rights violated. No other CARICOM state has had this issue to the extent that Jamaica has at the IHCHR, and it really raises questions as to Jamaica's commitment in the region to human rights. I mean, the human rights records of all countries are laid there at IHCHR, so it is really up to the Commission to select where it thinks the gravest abuses are taking place and to dedicate its energy towards those settings. And it has chosen Jamaica twice this year to do that, mainly because of the lack of action from the government to bring itself in compliance. The only other Caribbean state is Cuba, and Cuba not being a Caribbean state, not being a CARICOM state. But other than that, no other CARICOM state will be called up at this session of the IHCHR. So it's very disappointing for the government and disappointing for us being in the human rights business for 15 years to be still where we are in terms of compliance.
All right, Roger, I want to backtrack to March. What was the outcome of that hearing, and what were some of the important things to have been highlighted? Then I want to go forward to some of the recommendations that came from the JFJ in 2012 that have yet to be enacted.
Okay, so in March was the first real follow-up to this report. We reported essentially updated data that demonstrated on police killings, on detention situations, on children, particularly in lockup, that demonstrated that action had not been taken, and the IHCHR concurred for the most part and reiterated very strong recommendations to the government. The government provided some important developments that we were happy to hear about, such as the functioning of INDECOM, the Supreme Court decisions regarding INDECOM's powers to arrest and charge officers, and a few other minor changes, such as, policy decisions in the JCF, some small action. So the outcome of the IHCHR's hearing in March is obvious by the hearings that we're having in October, which is that the Commission was not satisfied by the state's response and therefore has convened another hearing to evaluate it. And I want to also note that this hearing was on the initiative of the Commission. It wasn't solicited by the petitioners, as they many times are, and as we have in the past as JFJ. JFJ has brought just this year alone about maybe 12 new cases of human rights violations against the state to the IHCHR, which we're currently dealing with right now. And the IHCHR, on its own initiative, scheduled this hearing. So it really is based on their independent assessment of the situation, not even based on a petition from JFJ and other organizations, as we have done consistently for the past decade. So it's very telling of their evaluation of the state's response.
Yeah, Roger, what you just said there, I guess a lot of people listening would probably think that the JFJ instigated. If the Commission is reaching out to us, it does say a lot. I'm going to ask you to sort of shift focus from Jamaica. Can we look at some of the other regions, nations that have human rights issues? St. Lucia, for example, there have been some issues there. And some of those issues, for example, members of the government the government there employed threats and lawsuits to intimidate the media and restrict press freedom. Not sure if you're familiar, but it happened. Meanwhile, the United States responded to serious human rights violations there in St. Lucia by the police by suspending all training and material assistance.
I'm familiar with that one.
I didn't hear you.
I'm familiar with the second one that you mentioned.
These are significant issues because human rights violations are human rights violations. In terms of you now going to convene with fellow human rights groups, how does these kind of violations by St. Lucia stack up against what we're treating within Jamaica?
Yeah, I mean, in two ways. One, it mirrors the pattern of impunity that we saw in St. Lucia, I think in 2010 or 11, with the police force killing several persons. One of the effects of that was that the U.S. government, as you know, invoked the Leahy Law and restricted aid, vital aid, to their police force. And it hampered their crime-fighting ability in that they couldn't get the training that they wanted in the U.S. anymore. They couldn't get the equipment because under the U.S. Federal law, the State Department and the Department of Defense couldn't give any more aid to the police force because they were found to be violating human rights. And what it showed was that the crime-fighting ability of the state can be compromised when the state does not adhere to human rights standards. In Jamaica this year, we had similar reports and allegations regarding the invocation of the Leahy Law in Jamaica and reports that certain units in the JCF were no longer receiving funding. So it demonstrates, Maya, that regardless of jurisdiction, the issues are the same and the effect on the state's ability can be the same.
Roger,
so I think it's an important takeaway.
We have to take it there. We wish you all the best with tomorrow's outcome. We'll be following the story. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria.
Our guest has been Roger Malcolm, director of the JFJ, talking to us about Tuesday's assessment of Jamaica's commitment to safeguarding the human rights by the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, IHCHR, of Jamaicans. The hearing is taking place in Washington in the United States. That is all for In Depth. When we come back, in sports, is the latest rift in the West Indies cricket close to a resolution? Stay tuned and you'll know.